Fair warning, this show contains strong language and adult themes from time to time. Sorry, Jerry can't help it.
Sick Boy Wolfgang Productions presents The Offering with Jerry Horror. A deep dive into the history of film and its filmmakers. Mostly horror, always genre.
RetroSource Long Island is taking you back. Take a trip back in time with their custom-built store paying tribute to the best decades of all time, the 80s and the 90s. They have a massive collection of video games to choose from, spanning from Atari 2600 to Nintendo Switch, not to mention a large selection of toys, plushies, art, collectibles, board games, and so much more. They've got a friendly and quirky staff that loves to talk to you all about your favorite movies, cartoons, and TV shows that you grew up with. Check out their funny skits on their Instagram at RetroSourceLI. Do you love E.T., Thundercats, Back to the Future, Masters of the Universe, RoboCop, Street Fighter, Knight Rider, Ninja Turtles, Pokemon, Power Rangers? Yeah, man, RetroSource has got you covered. Take a photo in their Saved by the Bell high school locker display. It's totally mint. Spend hours playing arcade games while getting a sugar rush from vintage candy and soda. It's gnarly, buddy. Located at 1075 Portion Road in Farmingville, New York, RetroSource, Long Island's most radical shopping experience. Welcome to The Offering with me, your host, Jerry Horror. Each week we take a deep dive into the history of film and filmmakers. Mostly horror, always genre. Please take a moment to subscribe to our show wherever you find your favorite podcast to stay up to date on future episodes. Coming up, the big dance number at the start of this movie was choreographed by Paula Abdul. This film takes place in the far distant future of 2019. TV's American Gladiators, as well as the plot and settings for the popular 90s arcade game Smash TV, were inspired by this film, based on the novel by Richard Bachman, which is actually the pseudonym for Stephen King. Stay tuned, you're not going to want to miss this.
Classics, modern fights. Jerry guides us through the nights. Horror's history in the lights. Exploring endless chills and heights. George Romero, lost footage and hidden gems. Director's visions, dark diadems behind the scenes. We're taking their insightful whispered secrets we share. Sam Raimi. The Offering with Jerry Horror. Stories old and new. Jason Kruger, Bruce Campbell, genre twists that shake your core. Every episode, we craving more. Mostly horror, always genre.
Ladies and gentlemen, friends beyond the binary, this is The Offering, and I am your host, Jerry Horror. Welcome to the show, folks. I hope you're getting ready for spooky season, because it's coming sooner than later. Who even knows what's going on? I mean, considering everything that's going on with the current administration, all year round is spooky season now. Who knows? Some masked men might jump out of a van and throw you in there. Woo! Who would have thought that? So guess what, kids? If you like spooky season, thanks to the Trump administration, it's year round. You can get snatched up at any time, just because you're a brown person. Hi, you remember me, your old pal Jerry? Sorry, I hate talking about politics, but are these even politics anymore? Is abusing people, kidnapping people, is that that's just normal now, right? We've normalized violence against hardworking people. In the beginning, it was all about getting the gang members and the child traffickers and all the bad people, the murderers. And now they're just taking Pablo and his son because they were going to get ice cream. That's what's going on in this country. And you know what? Today's movie talks about the future. This season, we're exploring a lot of movies that talk about dystopian futures. And you would watch a bunch of these films. I'm not going to give away what they are, but today's episode is one of them. You would watch these movies and you would say, wow, there's no way that this could happen. You're watching these movies in the late 80s, early 90s. This is a late 80s one. And you're like, this is insane. This could never, ever happen. And guess what, guys? We are living like in the RoboCop future, like old Detroit. We're living in old Detroit now. It is so scary. All of these films became so prophetic. And that's why we're looking back at a whole bunch of them, just because it's important to see how a lot of times art is reflective of societal change. So you might say, well, The Simpsons got it right. The Simpsons predicted it, but so did Paul Verhoeven in RoboCop. You know, like he kind of got a lot of things right himself. With that being said, I'm not trying to depress you guys, but it's kind of weird. There is like this parallel line of these action science fiction movies that really echo into our present day. And that is so incredibly frightening. I don't know about you, but when I was watching these movies as a kid, I was like, this could never transpire. How would these events possibly happen? But here we are. Whether it was Jurassic Park, they announced the other day that they've got a robot womb that is going to be able to grow a child. And these robot surrogates will take the child from conception all the way till birth. We're living in scary times, folks. Fiction has become reality, and reality has become stranger than fiction itself. I try to tune out as much as I can. I really do. Considering the evil news cycles, it's very easy to doom scroll and find yourself in these negative thought patterns. Once I feel that, I've gotten this off of my chest, I feel we can move forward and, maybe have a little break from all that nonsense together. A lot of people tell me when they're at work, they listen to this show. They tell me when they're commuting. So you know what? Let's put all that stuff aside. Let's enjoy ourselves. Let's get down to a nice little piece of old nutty nostalgia from my childhood. But before we get there, special thanks to the Scariatrics for our dope theme song and our good friend R.A. the Rugged Man for the parental advisory at the beginning of the show. Thank you to both of them. Anyway, here we go. When I was a kid, you would go with your friends and you would try to see these R-rated movies. The past generation kind of grew up with these PG-13 Marvel films or DC films. Most of the kids, they're able to walk into them. But when you were like a young kid, whether it was like middle school or like early high school, all of these action movies were rated R. They knew they couldn't sell Rambo with a PG-13. It was, how you say, the flavor of the day. You had to have R-rated, hardcore-ass violent movies because they were selling. Whether it was Nightmare on Elm Street or whether it was The Terminator, you had to have these very dark visions. As a kid, I was drawn to them. My neighbor Steve and I, we decided we were going to see an Arnold Schwarzenegger film called Total Recall. Total Recall is a masterpiece. And I really got to say, Arnold made a lot of great decisions. He did a lot of movies that were kind of sci-fi adjacent, perhaps even more like hybrid science fiction action. These were more heady films. So even if you weren't into Arnold or you weren't into science fiction, it was kind of this weird middle ground where you're like, yeah, I'm going to watch this dude go to Mars. This actually seems like something that anybody would sit down and watch. It's wild. It really is. RoboCop, I've told you, is a genuine masterpiece. But Total Recall is definitely up there. And look, make no mistake, there was an NES game of Total Recall. They tried to make toys, but decided not to because there was just too much sex. They never made the three-titted lady. I think that was a loss. There should have been an action figure of her. Because the whole thing was, they remade the movie with Colin Farrell, and the first thing people asked, like, is the three-boobed lady in it? And she wasn't, and that's why that movie failed. And it was PG-13. I digress. We decided one day during November when Total Recall was coming out, we're going to go see this movie. We're going to do our damnedest. And usually I had my older cousins would take me, especially to the horror movies and stuff. They were interested. They would drag me along. But this was kind of like, yeah, man, we got to go see this new Arnold Schwarzenegger film. And at this point, he's our hero. He's the guy. He's the Terminator. He's the Commando. We go up to the box office. There was a place over by me called the Comac Multiplex. It's kind of like the whole, like the South Park the movie, when they go to see Terrence and Phillip, and we're like, we'll take 2 tickets to Total Recall. And the guy's like, no. Now, not only are you shattering my dreams, as an 11-year-old boy, this is all I could dream of, was to go see Schwarzenegger, my hero, the Austrian oak, the bodybuilder who's a world champion, see him spout one-liners and dispatch of bad guys in gloriously violent fashion, and I was being denied. I have to say, this was probably my first experience with blue balls as a child. It was very upsetting. So Steve and I are like, what the fuck? We're like, what are we going to do? Because back in the old days, your parents would just drop you off at the movie theater and they'd say, go see a bunch of movies and leave us alone and we'll come pick you up when you call us. You'd call them back on a payphone. It was all very dicey, but that's how we lived in the 80s. That's just the way it was. You drop your kids off at the mall. You get the fuck out of the house, go to the mall, leave me and your mother alone, and we'll go do something. Truth be told, it was my father going to Pergament or Ace Hardware just looking at paint. But, bless his soul. We went and we sat outside the theater. Dude, this is ridiculous. What are we going to go see? There's nothing even like halfway decent that's like PG or PG-13. So these two big bodybuilder guys came along. Both with long hair, kind of like, they were a cross between like metal guys and Guidos, which was like a thing. Like, it's almost like Linkin Park of culture. They were like this hybrid theory of Guido metalhead. I can't explain it. You kind of had to be there. And they said, what's going on, guys? And like, they were like the Barbarian Twins. If you remember the Barbarian Twins and all the terrible movies they did, shout out to them. What's going on, guys? You couldn't get into the movie? Yeah, we want to see Total Recall. And like, the one guy has like a fucking Gold's Gym shirt on. There was always kind of that overlap because of the craze of bodybuilding. I mean, look, those were your guys and they all looked like gigantic bodybuilders, even the ones that weren't. Nah, dude, you're going to see this new Arnold movie. So we go back in with these guys, and these guys are fucking gigantic. They're like giants, comparatively to me and my neighbor Steve. And like, 4 tickets to Total Recall. We're looking at the guy, and we're like, fuck you. Fuck you. You locked us out of this. Now our older cousins, allegedly, are here, and they're going to take us to see this. Now, these guys were so cool, they bought us concessions. I don't know what these guys did. Maybe they might have been thugs. They might have been like drug dealers. They bought us concessions, and we went into the theater. The craziest thing happened because the one bigger guy with the Gold's Gym shirt, we get into the theater, and he's like, this seat isn't right. And I'm like, what do you mean it's not right? We're just trying to be cool around these guys. Like, we're just being quiet because we think these guys are the coolest guys ever because they got us into the movie. They've been talking about their girlfriends. I'm like, wow, I want to grow up to be these guys. These guys are super cool. This guy was so strong. And I'm telling you something, I'm pretty strong myself, but I don't think I could do what they did. He ripped the fucking seat out, just ripped it up out, and then repositioned it in the fashion that he decided. And these were old metal seats. This isn't like the new seats now that are electronic and they go back. No. These were hard-ass metal seats that could handle fat people, that could handle kids jumping on them. These things were built like fucking Abrams tanks. Ripped it right out, repositioned it, and he's like, that's better, bro. And then we sat there and we watched Total Recall, and we enjoyed it, all 4 of us. Just reveling in how wonderful it was. But the thing was, most people would say like, oh, those guys could have taken advantage of you and raped you. And, and I'm like, no, back in the day, things were different, man. It was one for all and all for one. Like, if you could help people, if you had little kids, because those dudes had probably been there. They probably wanted to go see a movie in the early 80s. We want to go see Death Wish 2. And somebody was like, fuck you, you're not seeing Death Wish 2. And they found like another pair of guys. It's like the whole thing with like the communal porn in the woods. You find the porn in the woods, and then you use it, and then you take it and you throw it back. And then it goes to another kid. It's communal. And that's what this is about. It's about rites of passage. It's about being told no by grown-ups and then having someone who's just a little bit older than you saying, fuck you, no, these kids can see this movie. And that's how we saw Total Recall. And I loved it. It's a masterpiece, 10 out of 10. No notes. Fantastic. That's what you had to do. Things weren't easy. I couldn't just go on like, was it Pirate Bay? I don't even know what it is. I don't bootleg shit. You couldn't just go rip it. Sometimes there were the VHS rips, and then later we got the DVD rips, but you would have to wait almost a year, 6 months to a year, for the thing to come to VHS. And we couldn't wait for that. And that's the other thing. When you were a kid, there was this really cool cachet that, guess what, bro? I saw Friday the 13th Part 6. And the other kids in school would be like, what? And then you just recount every scene. Now, there really weren't any boobs in there, but if it was a different film, you'd be like, and then this chick pulls her boobs out. And like all your classmates like, no, yeah. And then Jason, he totally fists a turkey. And like, what? You could even make shit up. Nobody, because they were just reveling because their parents wouldn't let them see this shit. But I was very blessed that I had older cousins that really liked horror movies. And I would get dragged to those. Sometimes it was terrible. It was borderline torture where I was covering my face. Do I really need to be seeing the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 in theaters? Even though it's a bit goofy, there's some really hardcore violence in there, possibly a 7-year-old should not be seeing. And I was subjected to all of it. And you know what? It made me a good person. It made me an appreciative person, a purveyor of the arts, so to speak. It might not be high art. Is there anything as high art, low art? Fuck that. Everything's art. If you find value in something, it's art. If you can appreciate it, it's art. So people always say guilty pleasures, things are lowbrow. No, even Arnold Schwarzenegger pictures. You could say whatever you want to say about these movies, but they're fun. They're exciting. And we look back and cherish them and what the man brought to us. I can't think of any other actor who had such an undeniable star quality in the 80s. Come on. You know, like when your mom tells you, just be yourself. Arnold Schwarzenegger, he was just being himself. And that was enough. Because he wasn't an actor. He was a movie star. And that is something that we are severely lacking these days. We got a couple of dudes. We got our Jason Momoas. You know, even like Dwayne. I wish Dwayne would make some R-rated pictures, but that's neither here nor there. He's doing the Smashing Machine. But there will never be another Arnold Schwarzenegger. And that's why I'm so excited to talk about this movie today. Because of my love for the former Governor. It really is a pleasure to be able to recount some of the tales that happened during the production of this film. Also, I might add, this is our second Arnold Schwarzenegger picture. We did Last Action Hero. Sick plug. Go back, listen to that motherfucker, because that's a dope episode. Last Action Hero was the movie that might have broke action movies, because everything changed after that. Everything changed. It led to, you got Keanu Reeves in Speed. That leads to the Bourne movies. It leads to actors who weren't action heroes per se. A lot of times they would get these guys, they would get like Olivier Grenier, and you'd have him, and he would do Nemesis, and he would do these kickboxing movies. And the thing was, he could barely speak English, but he was a really good physical actor, and he would do his own stunts. Well, they figured, let's just take a really good actor or a popular actor and teach him how to do stunts. And they figured out how to do that, sometimes to great effect. But Keanu Reeves really is the greatest example of that, because he really didn't know martial arts going into The Matrix. Then he learned Kung Fu. Then he learned Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And then by the time you get to this evolution of him and John Wick, he's like an incredibly competent martial artist, just beating ass everywhere he goes. So it's kind of a weird thing that this guy started out as not being the real deal. 20 years later, he's as real as it gets. Just don't fuck with his dog. Otherwise, he will pay you a visit. The Baba Yaga. Let's get to this episode. After the break, we're going to talk all about this fine film. You're going to be into it, man. You are going to dig it. So stay tuned. Hang in there, folks. This one is a barn burner. So it's time that we get into the Richard Bachman of it all. Who is Richard Bachman? Well, that was the pseudonym for one Stephen King. And how was Richard Bachman created? Well, Stephen King really felt insecure. And he got to a point in his career where he said, people are just buying my books because the name is Stephen King and there's this marketing push. At that point, he had written countless books, but he felt in his heart he had only written a couple of good ones. So he said to himself, I need to know if I truly am a good writer. So what he did was he set up a secret shell company, created an author by the name of Richard Bachman. And he put a bunch of these books out, and they sold incredibly well. And he was shocked. He's like, I guess I do have the goods. I've got what it takes. And ultimately, a lot of those books, those Richard Bachman books, started getting picked up and used for screenplays because people were like, hey, this Richard Bachman, man, we could make some of these movies. We could make movies out of these books. What are we doing? This is crazy. And then what happened was Stephen King later on an interview admitted to being Richard Bachman. What happened then was any studio that had licensed the Richard Bachman books to be made into movies just hit pay dirt because they weren't going to say that this movie was inspired by Richard Bachman, the bigger name, obviously, the draw, the marquee value. This was a film written by Stephen King. Now, the film in question today, Stephen King really didn't want his name on. He was like, it's an Arnold picture. I don't know if I want to be associated with it. So that kind of became a point of contention. At some point, I think he did send a cease and desist. It's TriStar Pictures, TriStar Columbia. He did not want them to use Stephen King. He wanted it to be a Richard Bachman joint. But they said, I understand their thinking. Stephen King is the name brand. Maybe that adds $20 million to the box office. Because you got people who are just, hey, look, he's made so many movies. There's a documentary out right now. I own it. And it's King on film. And it's just basically all about the effect that Stephen King had on cinema, which he did. He had a huge effect. You've got the highs of The Shining, and you've got the lows of The Langoliers. Sometimes to great effect, sometimes to no effect at all. But regardless of that, putting Stephen King as the dude who wrote your movie was big money in the 80s. It was basically a cosign. It was telling the audience that this is a story that was written by a master, and you should come see our movie because it's based on that.
In the year 2017, an innocent man accused of a crime has a choice: hard time or prime time.
Sensational. Perfect contestant. I want him.
He must pay or play the running man.
On your mark.
I'll be back.
Go!
The highest rated TV show in history.
Guess they want us to stay.
It's a game between life and death.
Give you a lift?
Arnold Schwarzenegger is the running man. He's playing for a prize. The prize is his life.
How about the life?
The running man.
One person who really liked the Bachman books, particularly The Running Man, the film we're talking about today, was Patrick Swayze. Patrick Swayze was offered The Running Man, and this ties into Roadhouse, sick plug. At this time, Swayze has to make a decision. He's got two scripts. He's got the script for The Running Man, and he's got the script for Dirty Dancing. And his wife, who was a dance instructor, said, listen, Patrick, this is it. If you want people to love you, you have to show them what you can really do. No one's going to love you for punching people in the face. There's a time and place for that, but show them what you're capable of. You're a great dancer. Swayze said, you know what? I'm going to listen to the woman I love. I'm going to make Dirty Dancing. And the rest is history. The producers had a second choice, and it was someone that I would never suspect. The second choice to play Ben Richards in this film, the titular running man, was Christopher Reeve. In a 2015 interview about the film, Paul Michael Glaser said that he was originally approached to direct the film, but declined because he felt the pre-production period was insufficient. He told Christopher Reeve, listen, this movie is not coming along the way that we want it to. And at this time, Christopher Reeve had just finished making Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, which ultimately became the most disastrous for many reasons, because Cannon made it and they made it for like $1.75. And it was kind of a box office flop, especially for a Superman, from the lofty heights of record-breaking earnings that they had made with the first two films. Even the third film made a lot of money. So director Andrew Davis was hired instead, but then he was fired 2 weeks later because the production was 1 week behind schedule, and then Paul Michael Glaser was hired as the director. Let's go into this Andrew Davis thing. So Andrew Davis is one of my favorite directors, especially from the 80s and 90s. Andrew Davis made Code of Silence, which might very well be one of Chuck Norris's best films. It's all set in Chicago. You got Dennis Farina in it. It's got a good story. Chuck Norris comes off really good. There's some fantastic action sequences. It's all shot on location. You know, it's one of those movies where like Chicago is the main character and everybody's just kind of in Chicago, and I dig that. Then he did Above the Law with Steven Seagal, and that made Steven Seagal a star. And then they did Under Siege, which Under Siege is a fantastic film. And then he did The Fugitive. I mean, look, it just keeps going and going. But Andrew Davis became a very prolific action suspense director. What happened here was they hired Andrew Davis, and they had like an idea of what they wanted for the budget. And ultimately, Andrew Davis was on this film for 2 weeks, and he like tore through $12 million in 2 weeks, which is a lot of money in 86. The producers were just like, what the hell is going on? And what's even crazier is he shot a lot of stuff in that 2 weeks. And believe it or not, if you watch the movie now, if you watch The Running Man now, there's whole action sequences that are in the movie towards the end, and they left that in there. They kept the stuff that he shot. I think what it was just that he was a great director, but he had a bigger idea of scope and what this movie should be. And Davis was fighting with the producers. Davis was saying, listen, we need more money. We desperately need more money for this movie to make it the vision that I see. And they just said, fuck that. You just spent $12 million in less than 14 days. We can't keep doing this. This was supposed to be a mid-budget, lower-budget picture, and we want to get it out for summer, so this just isn't going to work. Andrew Davis had to walk off the film. And this is nothing against Paul Michael Glaser, but Andrew Davis, better movie. Look at the track record. He's made so many action classics. He's made so many great movies. And I think that he probably would have made a better movie. And not only that, there's a ton of footage that he shot that's in this movie they kept because they knew it was good. It was action-packed. It was exciting. The original script that was based on the Bachman novel, they basically were like, all right, we need to have this be a self-contained thing. So the original screenwriter was a big fan of Dawn of the Dead. And he said, let's do The Running Man, but let's shoot it in a mall. So they found this gigantic mall that was in Toronto. And they're like, if we can close down the mall for a couple of weeks in January after the holiday season, we could probably get this all done. But they brought the numbers back to the producers. The producers, of course, being Rob Cohen. Rob Cohen would go on to make The Fast and the Furious, Dragonheart. He made a bunch of stuff. Triple X, if you remember that gem. The screenplay for this movie ended up being written by Stephen E. D'Souza. He wrote Die Hard. He would direct Street Fighter. He wrote The Last Boy Scout. So, again, you got good producers. You got good writers adapting the material. And all of this should have fallen into place. But unfortunately, as people go back in time, they say the big mistake with this movie was that they let go of Andrew Davis. And Schwarzenegger has stated this was a terrible decision, as Glaser shot the movie like it was a television show, losing all of the deeper themes. LA Weekly stated that the film's tone changed from a dark allegory to a humorous action film because they had to change the star of the film. When this movie was written for Swayze and then rewritten for Christopher Reeve, they were going to stick to more of the dark themes. From what I understand, this new version that Edgar Wright has cooked up with Glenn Powell, they're very much keeping it within the vein of what it originally was. He's got a sick daughter. He's going to go on the show. It's really about how terrible things are in this distant future. There's more of a dramatic bent to it. And I think that's why Christopher Reeve was so interested, because he would actually get to flex his dramatic chops. There's a couple of things here. With Reeve's version of this film, The Running Man was about an unemployed man who goes on a violent game show for a 30-day period to feed his family. That's how dire this is. This guy can't afford medication for his daughter. He can't afford to feed his family. It's poverty. They're in poverty, and this is the only way out. So now with Glazer and Schwarzenegger involved, the protagonist becomes a condemned but innocent criminal forced into a 3-hour gladiator-style game show by the justice system. Screenwriter Stephen E. D'Souza wrote 15 drafts of this script over the course of the film's development, but ultimately it had to be crafted to Schwarzenegger's persona. And the thing was, Schwarzenegger was in a bit of a slump here, believe it or not. Because let's see where Schwarzenegger was at. 1984, you've got the Terminator. Terminator is a star-making performance. 2 years prior, he did Conan. Conan was good, but what else has this guy got? Because you can have a one-off. He's a muscled barbarian. How much, what has he got? And he played the Cyborg, and it worked out. Terminator made a shit ton of money. I mean, now, adjusted for inflation, the Terminator would have made over $1 billion in today's money, which is like insane for a little movie that barely cost $3 million. But that's why we're still talking about the Terminator and Halloween, because there were movies that costed nothing and they made a shitload of money. If you could do that today, we saw that film, the Zach Cregger film, Weapons. Didn't cost much to make that movie, and it is cleaning up. It's looking to do over $100 million as we're recording this, and that is beautiful. We love to see it. Schwarzenegger then did Raw Deal and Red Sonja, and he had to do Red Sonja, and he couldn't play Conan because they only had rights to Red Sonja and not Conan, so he plays a character called Not Conan. No, that's not true. Red Sonja's a flop. He does Raw Deal. Raw Deal was written as a Charles Bronson vehicle. And that's the weird thing about Raw Deal. He plays the sheriff. He's kind of hanging around all these Harry Dean Stanton motherfuckers, and you're looking at the cast, and you're like, this is a Bronson movie. It's almost like they just extracted Charles Bronson from the film, and they're like plopped Schwarzenegger in there, and it doesn't work. So at this point, he's got 2 flops right after Terminator, immediately. Schwarzenegger is the man, and the reason that he's the man is because once he got involved with the Kennedy family, he started to get in bed with old Hollywood. See, back in the day, there was this place over in Los Angeles. It was a private lunch club. They had saunas. They had steam rooms. Milton Berle owned the place. And Milton Berle, notorious sweaty hog haver. Unconfirmed, confirmed, I've heard something like 15 inches. I'm keeping it real with you. He had a gigantic schlong. If you wanted to see it, Uncle Milty would show it to you. God rest his soul. But the reason his friendship with Milton Berle was so important, because he got to sit there. And all the old Hollywood, used to get Jimmy Stewart would come hang out. John Wayne would come hang out at this club, and they'd get their schwitz, they'd have lunch. But the real learning tree was happening for Arnold, because all these old guys were telling him, listen, this is how they fucked me on this deal. So this is what you do. So now you've got a guy who's incredibly intelligent. And this is what I talk about, man. You have to open your circle. You have to try to find as many resources. I mean, I'm not saying go marry into the Kennedys. That's not, realistic, except unless you're Chris Pratt. But you marry into this family, and now you've got connections. And these guys put old Arnold under the learning tree, and they schooled him to the game of entertainment and how you make real money in this game and how you own your own image and you become a producer. I've always admired Arnold because he is very much a self-made man. He hates that expression. That's what he did. He learned from these old guys. They're like, listen, do a movie that is suited to you. So The Running Man was a movie that was supposed to be just built. We're watching the opening of this thing. He loves his World Gym. He's got the World Gym shirt on. He's got a flex. The old thing with Hogan. Hogan must pose. Hogan must flex. Schwarzenegger must flex. He must be oily and muscly. And we must see that at some point. And right away, less than 10 minutes into The Running Man, you're seeing him, and he's enormous still at this point. He's still in bodybuilding shape. They make this movie, and this is really interesting because now we talk about like AI and deep fakes. And when they did the first cut of the movie, this test audience was shown the deep fake technology led them to believe that the two main characters were actually killed. This is how stupid people were in the 80s. Only later, when Richards and Amber are seen again, that's, you know who that is. That's Jesse the Body. Plays, he's the captain. When they're seen again, they realize that they're still alive. But a producer claimed the audience would be too stupid to understand what happened and ordered the movie to be edited so everyone knew right away that it was not the real characters that died. Should I also just tell you, Jesse the Body, former governor of Minnesota, it's me, your old pal Jesse. And I was talking to Arnold and I said, Arnold, you need me in this film. I'm smoking a joint right now. And look, Jesse is such a slickster. He showed up on set one day on Batman and Robin, and he convinced Arnold to put him in Batman and Robin. He didn't even have a character. He showed up on the set of Joel Schumacher's Batman and Robin and somehow gaslit everyone into writing him apart. What's even crazier is Schwarzenegger was feeling really insecure about The Running Man because of all the behind-the-scenes problems. He was like, man, I don't know if this movie's going to work. And he's like, I need a hit desperately. He was very thankful that Jesse came and added his colorful personality to The Running Man because he repaid the favor. And he said, Jesse, I got another movie I'm doing after this called Predator. But that's another story. Pop star Paula Abdul choreographed the pre-show dance sequences. This was her second film credit, though she had already choreographed 4 Janet Jackson videos. She had done videos by ZZ Top, Duran Duran, Debbie Gibson. The music used for the pre-show entertainment was produced by Jackie Jackson and dubbed Paula's theme in honor of Paula Abdul. The producers had originally wanted Chuck Woolery, Chuck Woolery from The Dating Game. They wanted him to play the role of Damon Killian, but Woolery was unavailable due to hosting jobs on both Scrabble and Love Connection. Arnold then suggested to the producers that Richard Dawson play Killian because he and Dawson were close friends and Schwarzenegger was a huge fan of Family Feud, which Dawson hosted. So, what does Schwarzenegger do? He doesn't. He reaches out to Uncle Milty, says, Milton Berle, you're friends with everybody in the business. You knew him from Hogan's Heroes. Can you get me Richard Dawson's number? And Richard Dawson, who was just the guy was just a chain-smoking drunk most of the time, which is not a stretch from the character that he plays Killian in this movie. The guy's always got a snifter of something going on. He said, Arnold, I really don't want to do a movie. I like doing Family Feud. I go and then I can see my kids and I can just do my thing. He says, listen, please, as a favor to Milton Berle, will you be in this movie? He says, all right, Arnold, for you, I'll do anything. So they got Richard Dawson. And I gotta say, this is one of the only movies that Richard Dawson ever did, but he's perfect as this evil game show host. And a lot of things in this movie, we had talked about this. You see things like professional wrestling, American Gladiators, later, Smash TV. And there is this weird over-the-top gladiatorial thing where people are drawn on by spectacle. We were already watching American Gladiators. We were watching professional wrestling. So why not The Running Man? And The Running Man itself is a reality show. And what's even crazier is how big reality shows became in the 90s. And now, you look at a lot of these streaming networks, the most popular things they're doing on HBO Max, it's reality shows. They make money. And later we would get stuff like Survivor on CBS. So why not? Why not put a bunch of men and women in a game show where they fight for their freedom, they fight for riches, they fight to the death? Unfortunately, what we don't know about the Running Man game show is that no one ever really wins. The public is made to believe that they win, but they don't. They just get murdered and they throw them away because they don't want to give them the money. Originally, this film's release was postponed from summer 1987 to Thanksgiving 1987 due to the producer's desire for the film to be the only action film released during the holiday season. The film opened on 1,600 screens on November 13th, 1987, to moderately positive reviews. Now, this is important because this happened again. See, The Running Man, the new version with Glenn Powell, the Edgar Wright version, was supposed to come out this summer, and it didn't. And guess what? They moved it to Thanksgiving. They actually moved it to November 14th. So the original came out on the 13th, and now this new one, almost 30 years later, is coming out on the 14th. And they actually pushed it a week forward towards Thanksgiving because they believe in the movie, and that's definitely a good sign.
We'll be right back with more of The Offering with Jerry Horror.
Okay, so I found my new favorite rabbit hole. It's called Horrifying Hot Sauce, straight out of Denver, Colorado. And man, this stuff is wild. Handmade, small batch artisan sauces, each one inspired by horror movies and all the pop culture stuff we grew up on. I'm literally scrolling through their site right now. It's horrifyinghotsauce.com, and it's like a haunted spice rack. They don't just throw peppers in a blender. No. These maniacs ferment every batch for weeks until it bubbles like some mad scientist's cauldron. And then they hit it with fresh ingredients, so you get this perfect balance of scary hot and scary good. And rumor has it, there's even a very special Gouligans collab coming, and oh, you know I need that one. Here's the deal. Use 10 off 4 for 10% off any 4 bottles. Hey, or you go big with 15 off 6. That's 15% off any 6 bottles of your choice. I'm literally adding bottles to my cart right now, so do it with me. Check out horrifyinghotsauce.com. It's spooky and spicy. Attention all horror-loving gals and ghouls. Are you thirsty for a frightfully good pint? Then rise from the grave and make your way to the Necromantic Brew Co. This horror movie-themed brewery is serving up scares and beers like no other, hosting killer events, unique horror happenings, and even special celebrity guests. And here's the twist. They're the only dedicated gluten-free brewery with a tap room in all of New York. We've summoned the lineup and loaded the crypt because the Necromantic fridge is overflowing with horror-inspired brews. We've got Atomic Blonde Ale, classic and crushable. Rosfratto, a bold and brooding stout. Bred by Dawn, a soft-spoken Belgian with a bite of orange. Rosemary's Berry, a fruited lactose sour with eerie freshness. And Saison of the Witch, sweet and crisp melon notes, so refreshing it's downright scary. But don't wait, once these cans vanish, they are gone. Find them at 253 Main Street in Farmingdale, haunting Long Island with hops and horror, easy to get to right off the Long Island Railroad. So come raise a glass with the living, the dead, and everyone in between. Necromantic Brew Co. Drink differently.
Now available in paperback, hardcover, and ebook. Icons of Fright. 100 interviews with legendary horror filmmakers. You can now own the greatest collection of horror interviews ever assembled. From the Universal monsters to modern-day meta, there's something here for every horror fan to sink their fangs into. Icons of Fright. 100 interviews with legendary horror filmmakers. Available now on Amazon from Harker Press.
Listeners and fans of The Offering can get their hands on their very own The Offering with Jerry Horror merch, now only at TeePublic. Find your own fresh The Offering with Jerry Horror high-quality merchandise, including t-shirts, hoodies, tank tops, long sleeves, stickers, and mugs. Just like the show, we've got gear that's mostly horror, always genre. The Offering with Jerry Horror TeePublic store has everything you need to represent your favorite podcast. Folks, head on over to teepublic.com right now and pick up your very own Offering tee today. You're listening to The Offering with Jerry Horror. Got a question or a story you want to share with me? It might be featured in a future episode. Email me at jerryhorror@gmail.com or hit me up on Twitter at jerryhorror. I'm also on Instagram. You can find me there at jerryhorror. Rate and review this show on Apple Podcast, and you might find your review in an upcoming episode. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to The Offering. Now back to the show. I have to get into this. The soundtrack was composed by Harold Faltermeyer, and it includes music by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, Richard Wagner, Jackie Johnson, and of course John Parr, who had written the theme song Restless Heart, Running Away With You. Now, I really like this song. I think it's a great song. Producers asked, they were in love with the St. Elmo's Fire song, if you remember that song. I can climb the highest mountain, St. Elmo's Fire. I don't know the song. But that was a big hit, and they said, get me that guy immediately. He's going to do the song for The Running Man. And it's so weird because like St. Elmo's Fire is like this weird romantic comedy property, and this is like a game show about people being murdered. And it's kind of strange. Speaking of people being murdered in this show, there's this weird conceit. They had to take the original script, and Stephen E. D'Souza's, he's like grinding the script down because, again, it was intended for Swayze, then it was intended for Christopher Reeve, and now in this 15th iteration of the screenplay, we have to make it more about Schwarzenegger. Schwarzenegger was very smart, and he kept saying to him, write me more one-liners. Write me as many one. He even says, I'll be back. He says it in multiple movies, but he says it in this movie. He's got a lot of great one-liners in this movie. Also, you've got Maria Conchita Alonso, who is always easy on the eyes. You got a great cast in this movie. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I mean, again, Richard Dawson, fantastic villain. You got Yaphet Kotto from Alien. He's great in this movie. And then you got all the gladiators they go up against. Not just Jesse the Body, but all of these weird guys, these weird characters. The Running Man feels like a video game before there was a video game. Now, this is something I didn't know. There were multiple lawsuits, one from France and one from Italy. Now, the first lawsuit says that there was this movie called Le Prix du Danger, which is The Price of Danger, directed by Yves Boisset. And that was made after Robert Sheckey's 1958 short story, The Prize of Peril, just like the 1970 West German TV movie, Das Missionspiel, The Million Game. So we've got a short story that was based kind of on a game show like this, right? And we've got this movie, Le Prix du Danger, and that's plagiarized because it's kind of the same concept. So they're suing them. The guy who wrote the 1958 story, and then it became a TV movie in 1970 in West Germany, Das Millienspiel, both of these entities are now suing the company. To make it even worse, there's a third person suing this, the people making The Running Man. And you probably know it as Lucio Fulci. Now, you know Lucio Fulci. He's made all kinds of things like Zombie. He's made so many classics. If we go back through like all kinds of exploitation films, horror films, Fulci lives. He's great. I went and I watched this movie that they were suing them. And I'm going to tell my listeners right now, go and watch this movie. It's called Warriors of the Year 2072. This picture takes place in 2072. This movie was shot in 1984. I got to tell you, I only saw this movie about a week ago. And it's streaming on Amazon Prime right now. Dude, there are whole sequences. It's not even like, there's a difference between like something is similar and you're ripping something off, and Warriors of 2072, like there are action sequences with the motorcycles, and the movie almost goes beat. Once he gets on the game show, Warriors of 2072 goes beat for beat with this Running Man. And it's the most insane thing. I can't even believe how far this whole thing went. It's actually pretty shocking. They went to court. The short story guy from Germany didn't get anything. The French people got something. And then the Italians ended up not suing them because they said, well, the world knows that you're a ripoff artist now, so nobody gives a shit. They took a very high stance to it. But I will tell you, folks, if you can, Lucio Fulci's Warriors of 2072, go watch this movie, and you're going to be like, holy shit, they made The Running Man 4 years before they made The Running Man. I mean, there are wholesale scenes in this film, especially action scenes, that are totally lifted from, this film. And it's really insane. I didn't know about this. I had never known about it. So ultimately, the movie's done. In its opening weekend, it was released in 1,600 theaters, and it grossed $8 million. The film's total domestic gross was $38 million. They wanted more. They wanted Terminator numbers, but they weren't going to get them. The film did very well for what it was. Now, we got to talk about critical reception. My good friend Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times gave the film 2.5 stars out of 4. complaining that all the action sequences are versions of the same scenario, but praised Dawson's performance, stating that he has found the role he was born to play. And I'll be honest with you, Richard Dawson in this movie, he steals the movie. He's great. I think it's Coleman Domingo who's playing the new host in The Running Man. And Coleman Domingo's a fantastic actor. So I'm really looking, he's got this cool mustache and some really cool outfits. I'm hoping he's able to steal the show, sing some songs. I'm into it. Vincent Canby of the New York Times wrote that the film has the manners and gadgetry of a sci-fi adventure film, but at heart is an engagingly mean, cruel, nasty, funny send-up of television. See, that's the thing, man. Whether it's RoboCop, whether it's Total Recall, whether it's Demolition Man, you watch these movies and they have like this really nasty kind of spirit running through them where it's kind of like subversive. It's almost a parody of modern culture in some ways. And it's crazy because it was very predictive of what modern culture would be. It's really scary stuff. Even some of the stuff we saw in Starship Troopers, like where they're talking about getting recruited, we would see very similar stuff going on with the Iraq War years later, which is just incredibly creepy. As far as serving your country and honor and duty to go look for weapons that don't exist. So, we're there. Variety wrote that the film further solidifies the star's winning formula and works only on a pure action level, calling the satire constantly being contradicted by the film wallowing in mindless violence for the roller derby addicted masses it's supposedly criticizing. And we had seen, if you ever seen Jimmy Caan did Rollerball was kind of like that too, involving television and how people were just being used as kind of like, meat. They were out there to die for the audience, and that's all their purpose was. They're not wrong. It's crazy. Some of the reviews were really brutal and some of them not so much. We watched this movie with a bunch of friends recently and everybody loved it. It totally works. It's got that nostalgia twinge and there's just something really audacious about the whole proceedings. I think it's a great movie. You can make fun of it. There's a lot to make fun of, but at the end of the day, it's incredibly inventive and entertaining. Now, on Rotten Tomatoes, it's got a 67%, which is pretty good. Metacritic, it's got 45 out of 100. Not bad. B+ on CinemaScore. So again, most people really do enjoy this movie. Is it one of the lesser movies? Perhaps. But I do feel that like if you're going to have a Schwarzenegger marathon, you can do T2, you can do Predator, and you definitely, as your double bill, you could do your Running Man. It fits in there. What happened was Schwarzenegger did Predator, right? Because here's the deal. The Running Man was shot in 86, but it didn't come out until like 87. So did Predator. And basically, 20th Century Fox got wind that The Running Man was kind of a flop. They were like, do we really want Schwarzenegger to have The Running Man come out and then kind of like poison the well for our movie? So they basically offered money to Columbia TriStar and said, listen, you hold it back until Thanksgiving and we'll put Predator out in the summer and it'll set your movie up bigger. And they were kind of right. So yeah, you could say that it's one of the lesser of the films, but at the end of the day, I don't know. Kind of is what it is. You look back at this stuff and you could be very contemptuous of it. You can kick it like a dog. But at the end of the day, it's just an entertaining little movie. Like, it's not that serious, guys. It's Arnold Schwarzenegger saying one-liners and killing people. That's what we want. And on home media, when this thing came out on VHS, Schwarzenegger always cleaned up on home video, thanks to international sales and kids like myself who couldn't see this film in theaters. Its VHS did incredibly well. It eventually finally got released on DVD in 1997, and then again in 2004. On February 9th of 2010, Lionsgate released the film on Blu-ray with a 7.1 surround sound mix. Most recently, November 8th of 2022, Paramount Home Entertainment bought the rights to the film so that they could make this new remake, sequel version. It's HDR10, Dolby Vision 5.1 surround. They remastered it. And I'm going to tell you, if you got Amazon open later, buy this 4K. There's not a lot of special features, but Jesus Christ, does this new scan of the movie look gorgeous. It's a definite recommend. If you can get it for under $15, just buy it. You're going to love it. There was a video game, and I wasn't even aware there was a video game. The video game, even though the movie came out like years ago, it came out in 1989. It was a beat-em-up video game based on the movie by Emerald Software. It was released only on home consoles, and when I say home consoles, not Genesis or Super Nintendo, the Amiga, the ZX Spectrum, and the Commodore 64. Chances are, unless your family had shitty home computers, that was the only way you were going to play the Running Man video game. It is what it is. We can't complain about these things now. You make your own conclusion what you think about the Running Man. I think the Running Man should have had action figures. I think the Running Man should have had a proper video game. I think right now, right this moment, you got Schwarzenegger. He doesn't have to act. He doesn't have to have the same ripped physique. You could make a video game. You could make a throwback 2D beat 'em up. Even like you look at the jumpsuit that he wears. It's iconic. You can buy that jumpsuit. It's dope. Everything about it. I think this is another case, sadly, where the film was ahead of its time. Even more depressing is that it's kind of mirroring our very real life. You can see that there's like people that are like in the ghettos and the barrios, and they're watching on these TV screens the Running Man happening, and they're betting and they're gambling. It's for the people. Over in Brooklyn, over towards Canarsie, there are a bunch of people in the streets watching the Logan Paul fight. And that kind of reminded me, like that same imagery, like there's people watching this thing, and it's like this kid who's like an influencer, a Silver Spoon kid. You know, he earned his money, he did his thing, but there's something very dystopian about all of it. So a lot of the imagery that you see in The Running Man has come to fruition. And to me, that's really fucking disturbing. I can't believe that we live in this world where like you watch these things as a kid, and now it's our current every day-to-day reality. That's scary. On February 19th of 2021, Paramount Pictures announced that it would make a new film adaptation of the novel, and it would be more faithful to the source material. Edgar Wright would direct and reimagine the story with Michael Bacall, the latter of whom will pen the screenplay. Simon Kinberg of X-Men fame would be producing through the Genre Films banner. Glenn Powell would star. In April 2024, this news was announced. Production is scheduled to begin November 24th, 2024. On October 4th, they revealed that Katie O'Brien, who I love, Katie O'Brien was in The Love Lies Bleeding. She was fantastic in that. She's an action star. You want to talk about, I mean, she's doing some crazy shit. It's a shame they had her in Ant-Man and Quantumania, and that was just a shit show from top to bottom. She was wasted in that. But that girl's body is a special effect. She's insane. When I saw Love Lies Bleeding, I said, give this girl a couple of machine guns. Let her go run around. I mean, you want to make Rambo? Let's make a different Rambo with a girl. This'll work. I know it works. I'm tired of people telling me I don't know what I'm talking about, but I do. You get a hot girl. She's got muscles. You give her some guns. She beats some people up. She kisses a girl at the end. We all go home. We jerk off. It's fantastic. 10 out of 10. No notes. 5 stars. Josh Brolin was announced to play the film's antagonist. I love Josh Brolin. Like I said, we saw him the other night in Weapons. I'll watch Josh Brolin wash socks. He's that fucking good. He's like one of those actors when he shows up in a movie, I'm like, Josh Brolin. I feel better about the movie because I know that he's always going to give it his all. And I'm going to tell you something. Here's a controversial opinion. Josh Brolin, Thanos, should have been nominated for an Academy Award. I'll say it. I know there's people out there, stuffy people, the highbrow scumbags will say, oh, Jerry, and this big Marvel. No, because if you look at Infinity War and you look at Endgame, especially Infinity War, that's really his movie, it's a fantastic performance. And it's a performance that was CGI captured. And it's crazy because there's rumors now that they might be bringing back Thanos. And the only reason that they do stuff like that is because he was that damn good. So, whatever. Michael Cera's in this film. And again, it's Edgar Wright. Amelia Jones joined the cast. The original date was set for November 7th. They have pushed it now to November 14th. Hopefully it's fantastic. I really like Glenn Powell. I think he's a great star to watch. I see what he's doing. He's doing like a Backdraft remake. He was in Top Gun. He did Twisters. He's smart. He's doing sequels, legacy sequels, but the reason he's doing that is because he knows that's where his bread is buttered, baby. DiCaprio told Timothy Chalamet, he said, listen, he goes, if there's one thing you don't do, don't be a superhero. Anthony Mackie has said it. The superhero becomes the star, and you're just the guy who plays the star. Even people like Chris Evans, he's been fantastic. I thought he was great in Knives Out and some other stuff. But the problem is that people just look at you and they say, oh, it's Captain America. And I think, weirdly, that happened to Christopher Reeve, where every time you looked at Christopher Reeve, you're like, all right, he's going to rip that shirt off at any moment. He had that secret hope, that he's in some kind of shitty movie and he's just going to become Superman. But yeah, so what happens is you start to realize that Captain America is the brand. Captain America is the star, not so much Chris Evans. And that's the danger of it. That's why DiCaprio is telling Chalamet that. And I think Tom Cruise told Glenn Powell a lot of those same things. He produced this video for Glenn Powell. It was like 11 hours long. And he's like, these are all the things you don't do. How you get the trajectory of your career to where you want it to be versus doing things for the sake of doing things. Just like we talked about Schwarzenegger with Milton Berle going under that learning tree. You got Glenn Powell. He's under Tom Cruise's learning tree. And I think that's a fantastic thing. Whenever you can have somebody who knows the game and you can mentor and get that knowledge out of them, listen to them, not just the successes, but listen to the mistakes they made, because that's even more important. Ultimately, what happens is this guy Glenn Powell's pretty smart, because yeah, he's doing Backdraft. He did Twisters. He did Top Gun. But I found out that he's got a production company. And the reason they're doing these movies is so that he can get enough money to do the original shit that he wants to do. And you know what? Can't be mad at him for that. That's just how business is done. Well, we've gotten to my favorite part of every episode. It's the unhinged reviews that we find on the internet. What did people really think of this movie? I like to find the weirdos. I like to find the people who are strange. The ones that just have no grip on reality or media or anything. This one's written by Miss NK. 1 out of 5 stars. Totally different from the book written by Stephen King. This film is very dated now. Cheesy. Okay, you're not wrong. It is cheesy. It is a bit dated. But you know what? It works. And you are entitled to your own opinion. You do not have to love a movie, okay? You don't have to. But everybody keeps saying, why can't this be more like the Bachman book? Well, it took us 30 years, but this new film that Edgar Wright has coming out is far more direct to the source material. So let's see. Will you, when you see the more grounded version, the more grounded action version that Glenn Powell has, will you cry? Will you cry and say, oh, I wish it was more like Arnold? Or will you enjoy this and say it's superior? That's the stupid version of that movie. This is the smart one. Zenya's Muse, 1 out of 5 stars. Rented it for my grandsons who loved it. Not my taste. That's a good grandma. That's a good grandma, because she knew. She rented this movie for her grandsons, and she didn't have no interest in it. But she put that on. See, that's something my grandmother would do. My grandmother says, listen, I don't want to watch this fucking movie, but if it's going to amuse these kids for 90 minutes, fantastic. No notes. I'll make some SpaghettiOs, some Ilios pizza, and they'll leave me the fuck alone for 90 minutes while Arnold Schwarzenegger spits out one-liners and murders people. Because that's how you get it done, guys. Hey, listen, when we were kids, you didn't have fucking iPads. You couldn't just put an iPad in front of a kid. You had to fire up the old television set, stick the VHS in, go with grandma to the Blockbuster or the mom and pop and say, hey, what do you dopey kids want to watch? We want to watch The Toxic Avenger. Let's fucking watch it. If you'll shut up for 5 minutes to get some sanity, I'm going to go outside and have a drink. That was Grandma. Tam, 1 out of 5 stars. This movie was horrible. There was no comparison to the book. I had read other reviews and I regret buying this DVD. It was a waste of time. Now, this review was from 2009. This movie was released in 1987. It took you this fucking long. Like, it took you this. You're that big of a fan of Stephen King or Richard Bachman, and it took you this long to figure that out. Get fucked. Get fucked. Because you know what? No one cares, lady. Oh, I'm so sorry it doesn't live up to the Bachman book. What are you people going to do? Listen, me and producer Pete, we are hardcore fans of Edgar Wright. We love what he does. He's a brilliant director. In my eyes, he does no wrong. He's brought me so much joy with his films. He loves movies, and you see that in his movies. He's one of the very few directors that is working today where his love of cinema is infectiously placed in front of you, where you're saying to yourself, oh my God, this guy loves movies the way that I love movies. So to me, he can do no wrong. I know win, lose, or draw, whatever I see in the theater, I'm going to be entertained because I got my man Edgar Wright, and I know he'll never steer me wrong. Even if it's not that good, I'll probably enjoy it because I'm stupid. Mike Clore, 5 out of 5 stars. This 1987 Arnold action sci-fi classic was written by Stephen King and focuses on a depressing future in which the economy is terrible. Whoa, that kind of sounds like right now. A police state is enforced. Wow, that also kind of sounds like right now. In order to avoid social unrest, the government creates a popular sport in which prisoners battle modern-day gladiators to the death on television. Sound familiar? This movie is essentially the original Hunger Games, minus the child characters and boring subplots. That said, this movie is very entertaining and a well-made action flick with Arnold in his prime doing what he does best. The overall look gives this film an Escape from New York quality as well. This guy gets it. And look, because the thing is like, I understand, like, I don't, like, you're allowed to have an opinion, but it's like, a turkey's a turkey, a goose is a goose. And this is a goose. And the reality of it is, when you go out for hamburgers at McDonald's, you're not getting a filet mignon dinner. You're getting McDonald's. And that, my friend, is the approach with a lot of these pieces of action cinema, especially of the late 80s and early 90s. You know exactly what you're getting into. Because above all else, Arnold Schwarzenegger is a brand. And he has certain boxes he has to check in this time period. He's got to do his one-liners. He's got to flex. He's got to say some funny things. He's got to smoke a cigar. And that's why we love him. I think what it was that Schwarzenegger was trying to find high-concept action hybrids with science fiction or even a little bit of horror so that he could expand his base. It's funny because, we talked about like Van Damme. He finally was able to do Time Cop. And then eventually he just, I think that was the thing, man. If you were an action star and you could find a decent script that had some social commentary and some more lofty goals of saying something, I'm not sure what The Running Man is saying, but it definitely does paint a picture of the future that we are living in right now. And that is incredibly scary. Watching all these films growing up, I didn't think that they would be so predictive of what we're living through. And that alone is a testament to the quality and creativity of these movies. The Running Man will never win any awards, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, it won my heart. So if you've listened to this episode, you've made it this far, you're a trooper, you're a real one. I'm giving you a 5-star gold medal. You are officially a part of the Offering Army. We are glad to have you here. And if you did make it this far, in fact, if you can go to the comments, go write, Run, Arnold, Run. Again, go to the comments, whether you're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music. We're not Apple Music. We're Apple Podcasts. Don't do that in Apple Music. Run, Arnold, Run. All caps. and as many exclamation points as you can find. Because that way, your brothers and sisters who listen to this show, they will know that you're a real one. They'll say, that guy, he's a real one. So I hope all of this nonsense has brought you insight into my way of thinking. Is The Running Man a good movie? The answer is yes. Is Maria Conchita Alonso still hot? The answer is yes. Her and Salma Hayek are aging like fine wine. So I guess the real takeaway is marry a Latina. Listen, if old Uncle Jerry had a Maria Conchita Alonso, he wouldn't have half the fucking problems he has now. But we'll get there. Well, folks, this has been The Offering. I'm Jerry Horror. Mostly horror. Always genre. You've been listening to The Offering with Jerry Horror, produced by Pete Bune. If you have a question or story you want to share with me, we'd love to hear from you. You can email me at theofferingwithjerryhorror@gmail.com, or hit us up on Twitter at theofferingwjh, or hit me up on the Instagram at Jerry Horror. You get the picture? Subscribe to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find your favorite podcast. Join us next time for another Offering.
Chasing worries like a Maya drama twist that shake your core. Every episode, we craving more. Mostly horror, always genre.
This has been a Sick Boy Wolfgang production. Thank you for listening.